Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos. Mi nombre es Cristóbal García y soy parte del Comité de Liderazgo para convertir a UNC en la próxima institución al servicio de los hispanos en Colorado. Me da gusto darles la bienvenida hoy y servirles como maestro de ceremonias. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Cristóbal García, and I serve as a member of the group leading UNC's efforts to become Colorado's next Hispanic serving institution. It's my pleasure to welcome you to UNC and to serve as MC of this afternoon's activities. Since 1889, the University of Northern Colorado has been serving the students and future leaders of Colorado. As our state and local demographics change, and as the diversity on our campus continues to grow, we must adapt to continue providing a world-class education to our students while graduating the next generation of educators, business leaders, artists, and healthcare professionals. Our transition towards becoming a Hispanic serving institution speaks to our mission in putting students first, aligns squarely with key vision elements of our 2030 strategic plan, and helps us create a more inclusive and community-oriented campus. To provide additional context on UNC's commitment towards becoming an HSI and our leadership in key areas that matter to the Hispanic and Latinx identifying students and families that we serve, I would like to welcome President Andy Feinstein to the stage.
Thank you, thank you. What a turnout. Good afternoon, everybody. How's everyone doing out there? Doing great? Well, thank you so much for being here this afternoon, and thank you to Dr. Roberto Montoya for visiting the University of Northern Colorado at the conclusion of your statewide tour of Hispanic serving institutions. So thank you very much for being here. Dr. Montoya is the Colorado Department of Higher Education's first ever Chief Educational Equity Officer. And I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Montoya last May when he attended UNC's Latinx graduation. His remarks were inspirational, and I was impressed by his vision for the future of Colorado. I also want to thank Dr. Angie Paccioni, Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Higher Education, who I believe is joining us remotely this afternoon. So hello remotely, Dr. Paccioni. And I also want to recognize Dr. Tobias Guzman for leading UNC's pursuit of an HSI designation. He deserves a round of applause too. Thank you, Tobias. So you just heard that the University of Northern Colorado is poised to become Colorado's next Hispanic serving institution. And during the first phase of our strategic plan, Rowing Not Drifting 2030, we prioritize completing the discovery phase of becoming an HSI. Now we're in phase 2 of our plan, and we will complete the next steps necessary to apply for federal designation. And by prioritizing this as a part of our strategic plan, we are making an important investment in the future of UNC. The accomplishments we are celebrating today have been in the works for many, many years. When we developed Rowing Not Drifting 2030, faculty, staff, and students collectively envisioned UNC as the institution that Colorado looks to as the future of higher education. And I could not agree more. I would add that I see UNC as a clear choice institution for Latinx students. We are a community that embraces and supports our Latinx students. This bold vision simultaneously draws on my call to campus to be student-focused, student-ready, and truly students first. We empower students to realize their fullest potential, and UNC is positioning itself over the next decade to better serve our community, our region, and the state. The diversity within UNC is a distinct advantage that we celebrate and cultivate. It is not an afterthought. UNC's commitment to the values of inclusion, equity, and diversity is a core element of our strategic plan, and it is integral to all that we do. At UNC, students learn through meaningful discussions that embody shared and varying experiences, viewpoints, and ideas. And this is possible because our community of Bears is composed of individuals with many different identities, experiences, and worldviews. For example, among our degree-seeking undergraduate students, 86% come from the state of Colorado. More than 72% say that UNC was their first choice institution, and 42% identify as the first in their family to attend a four-year university. How many first-gen students we have in here right now? Look at that, that's amazing. Thanks for all being here. Additionally, I'm excited to share that as of this fall, 25.5% of our undergraduate students identify as Hispanic or Latinx. And this number has grown over the years and moves us toward our goal of becoming a Hispanic serving institution. We also prepare our students to succeed beyond graduation. I am proud to say that UNC is a leader in social mobility. In fact, we are ranked #1 in Colorado according to CollegeNet's Social Mobility Index. And we are committed to making higher education attainable. 38% of our students graduate with no debt. And of those students who do graduate with debt, the average is approximately $23,000, which is well below the national average. And this makes it possible for graduates to launch their careers without the burden of mounting student debt and to quickly achieve a return on their investment in higher education. Regardless of the career path a UNC graduate follows, we know that earning a degree can change for the better the lives of individuals, their families, and the broader community. It is this belief that drives our work here at UNC, and it is why helping more students earn a UNC degree, including an increased percentage of Hispanic and Latinx identifying students, is a top priority. But first, we must address equity gaps. Currently, there is a 15% difference in the four-year graduation rate of Latinx students compared to white students. Let me let that sink in, 15% gap. As long as this equity gap persists, we are not effectively serving all of our students. We have a responsibility to do everything in our power to eliminate equity gaps. When a student enrolls at UNC, we have an obligation to ensure that they succeed and that they thrive. This is the belief at the core of UNC's pursuit of an HSI designation. So I'm happy that we're here today to celebrate all of our work thus far, and most of all, I'm proud to be president of Colorado's next Hispanic serving institution. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, President Feinstein. UNC has long been supporting the economic and social well-being of all students who walk through our halls. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Roberto Montoya to the stage to share information on his HSI tour across Colorado and provide perspective on servingness around the state.
Hola, buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Y'all, give yourself a round of applause. This is wonderful. Again, my name is Roberto Montoya. I use he, him, el pronouns, and it's the honor of my life and my professional career to serve as the first ever Chief Educational Equity Officer in the Colorado Department of Higher Education. And before I get started, though, I want to thank my amazing team that I get to work with every day, Amina Buyad here and David Olguin, who literally I would not be here without them, and this work wouldn't be happening without them. I suffered a serious back injury a few weeks ago, and I almost wasn't able to make it today. But when we were talking, and they're like, yo, there's gonna be like hundreds of people there. You need to be here. And I'm so glad that I am here because I feel better today than I have in a very long time. And I wanna thank you all for that because my critical spirit and my Radical Corazon is so full right now because and we talked about this, the reason this whole tour started was because I was asked to give a keynote speech at Adams State University in Alamosa. And Adams State is the first HSI in the state of Colorado. And I thought, you know what would be really cool? Is because I was talking with Dr. Guzman, President Feinstein, Cristobal, about what if we bookended these talks by finishing up at the next HSI? And then maybe, because it was closely corresponding with Latinx Heritage Month and Hispanic Heritage Month, I can go on a tour across the state and go to all the HSIs that I possibly can. And the goal of that whole tour was to use my ears proportional to my mouth, was to listen. What are our students and our communities, our staff, faculty, and leadership saying about what is working? Because the wonderful thing that is happening is even without a designation, there is wonderful work that is happening at all of our institutions of higher ed. That our institutions are doing all that they can to serve and to center those students who need the most support. And in this state, demography demands that we pay attention to our gente and to our people. And when I was at Adams State, you know, they don't hesitate to say that they're the first HSI. I was at CSU Pueblo, and they call themselves the People's HSI. I was at MSU Denver. They're like, we're the largest HSI. But none of them can say that they're the next, and I would say the most energized HSI. I would say that that is UNC. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, was raised by an amazing single mother and my older sister. And one of the wonderful gifts about being on this tour is that so much of it, even right now as I look out to you, has reminded me of being home. Growing up in Albuquerque, I went to a high school that was 95% Chicano, Latino, Hispanic, Mexican, Native, Black. And if you're from northern New Mexico, you know those are all unique identities. But I was always surrounded around people who looked like me. But I can assure you that my high schools and even the institutions that I attended in this state didn't always center servingness. You know, I went to schools that, you know, merely enrolled Latinx and Hispanic students. Didn't really focus on what does it mean to serve them. Because servingness requires a certain amount of reciprocity. That in order to serve and to be in service of someone, you have to understand what they need to feel like they are being served. And part of the mantra of the Office of Educational Equity is that we have to be responsive and not prescriptive. Our HSI work must be responsive and not prescriptive. We have to involve those who are telling us, this is what I need to feel like I fully belong here. I need to see myself in the professoriate. I need to see myself in the curriculum. I need to see myself in the community. The space and place that you are creating gives me so much hope and pride. And I feel that the fact that my ancestors called me to this role, that this is why, for these reasons, for these spaces. My mom never graduated high school, but when she was pregnant with me, she read Rudolfo Lanaya's Bless Me Ultima. And in the book, he says, and Ultima says this, that destiny must unfold itself like a flower. I cannot tell you how many times that I've talked about UNC's journey and destiny to HSI like that. I've shared your website more times than I can count as a model of what it looks like to be very transparent and very intentional about what it means to get to HSI designation and what that means for your students, for your staff, and for your community. And when we talk about what it means to serve community and really center HSI work, it's important because when we look to census data, Latinos accounted for more than half of all US growth in the last decade, 51.1%. In the next decade, our gente will account for 78% of net workers, and in the state of Colorado alone, over the next decade, 3/4 of all job replacement will happen by Latinx people. And that's across all levels, CEOs, managers, directors, frontline workers. And so the work that you are doing now is truly generational work. And we must be in symbiosis with each other as we do that work. And the important thing about this work, as I've been on this tour and I've been talking to countless people, is that HSI work and the designation is just a part of the work. That's not the designation, or the destination, excuse me. So the designation is not the destination. It's just a part of what we're gonna be doing. But if we're gonna be doing this work together, we have to understand for the rest of our communities that HSI work is not zero sum. That does not mean that we do not care deeply about other students and other work. In fact, if we do HSI serving this work right, all of the rest of our policies, practices, and procedures will be, I assure you of that. And so for me, one of the greatest books that I've read over the past year is Heather McGhee's book, The Sum of Us. And in that book, she challenges us to push back on the notions of zero-sumness, that somehow we're in this, and that if we do this, we're taking away from someone else. But at the end of the book, she mentions this, that if we are doing our work correctly, we can focus on what we call the solidarity dividend. What does it mean when we come together in solidarity to move forward justice and equity, and as President Feinstein said, to focus on erasing those equity gaps? And this is a part of that work in getting to there. I am honored to be in this work with you all. I'm honored to be here today to see this wonderful commitment, celebration, and the future of UNC and the work that you all will do. And I want you to know that the Office of Educational Equity, the Colorado Department of Higher Ed, and the state of Colorado is with you. And we are gonna be along you every step of this journey. And I just want you to know how deeply honored I am to be here and to be a part of this wonderful event. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Dr. Montoya. As we can see, institutions around the state are serving our students more effectively and are working towards educational equity for all students. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Manuel del Real to the stage to share a wonderful new initiative he's launching alongside the Colorado Department of Higher Education.
Buenas tardes. Thank you again so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I definitely want to thank my colleagues here for inviting me to be here with you all to celebrate UNC being the next HSI. So again, give yourselves a round of applause, because again, this is some really great work. So I use he, him, his pronouns, and I've served as the Executive Director for HSI Initiatives and Inclusion at MSU Denver for almost 3 years. So I literally had 3 weeks before the pandemic hit, and then it was like, hey, go work from home and let's figure out how we continue this designation. So definitely it's really been a privilege for me to be here back in Colorado. I was born and raised in the north side of Denver. I went to Denver Public Schools, and MSU Denver was the first institution to really reach out to me and offer me an opportunity to participate in the high school Upward Bound program. And so it's pretty exciting that I finally, full circle, am now back here doing some great work and being able to help out our community and our gente. So definitely been excited to be in this role. MSU Denver now is at 36% of our students identifying as Hispanic and Latinx. And so we've definitely had a 12-year journey all through that and to get to HSI status, but definitely it's been a lot of challenging work to maintain this and keep this momentum going. And so what I'm saying to you all is that keep this momentum going, it's gonna be great. And also too, what Dr. Montoya did say, right? You have Colorado to back you all. So I definitely wanted to chat about that a little bit. Colorado currently has 13 HSIs and 12 emerging HSIs. And so definitely thinking about the resources, the opportunities that we have here to really be able to focus on our students, to be able to provide them with a great opportunity, because being the #1 transfer institution in the state, we all know that Latinx students come from different areas all throughout the state and end up at different institutions. And so why not collaborate more and be a resource for everyone? So again, we also know that students are attending 2 years and 4 years as well, and that number is going to continue to increase, right? Demographics demands that, stats tell us that, and so definitely it's good to also identify and be in a good space now to really identify what's really working for our students, really to really reimagine what's possible And I think that's one of the things too that the COVID has really, shared with us too, is that there's different ways that we can do things. So we really want to develop this HSI consortium, partnering up with the Colorado Department of Higher Education, Dr. Montoya. We also have his team as well, David and Amina, and also Ray, who's part of our staff. But really came together because as I've been in this work, as I've been meeting with different institutions throughout the country, identifying what are some needs, what are some things that we can continue to do to support one another as we continue to, celebrate moments like this, right? So definitely plan to have this consortium as a statewide community and commitment. The purpose is to provide a collaborative community, right, of HSIs aimed at strengthening our organizational capacity to intentionally serve Latinx students. Also to provide professional development and networking opportunities, definitely sharing best practices. We also know that there's a lot of folks, different areas, institutions, departments, programs that are doing some really great work here in the state. And so why not be able to have opportunities for us to share with one another what's really working at our institutions, right? Especially when we're thinking about conferences and who could be able to attend these expensive conferences. So really being able to find an opportunity for us here in the state to really share and highlight all the work that's being done here. Another one is to really share resources and information, right? So the University of Arizona has done an amazing job in terms of leading this great work as an HSI. They also developed the Arizona HSI Consortium. And so again, that's an example too of being able to identify what's really working in other areas and being able to share some of those resources as well here in the state. So being able to take some pieces there in terms of the structure. Also to collaborate and cultivate federal and to seek federal and foundation funding, right? So this consortium really want to bring together not only emerging HSIs, but current HSIs to really develop relationships, to really be able to have a sense of what's going on here in the state. So then that way we could say, hey, there's this really great grant and it's wanting, 2 4-years or a 4-year to partner up with the 2-year institution to really receive some grant funds. So really being able to take this to the next level and to help out our community at the state level and really develop these partnerships, right? Also, again, engaging in community partners. We also have COSIO, we have the Denver Scholarship Foundation, we have LAEF, we have different community organizations, right? You all know also the local organizations too. So really it is about bringing in who are those organizations to really committed to doing this work and bringing them into the fix to be able to help out as well. So I'm definitely here to invite you all. We have invited presidents, chancellors, and equity officers to attend our kickoff meeting. That's going to be on Tuesday, November 15th from 5 to 6 p.m. We're going to have it virtually as well as in person at MSU Denver. But really hoping to provide this opportunity to really bring folks together to talk about what are some structures that we can think of, what are ways for us to move forward with this initiative. But again, definitely this is going to be an opportunity for us to really be united as a state and really be able to share, again, resources to make sure that we have more institutions just like UNC being the next HSI coming forward. So really want to set that bar high. So again, also too, we're going to have Dr. Marla Franco, who is the co-founder of Arizona HSI Consortium, as well as the assistant provost at University of Arizona to be able to speak at that meeting as well. And so really, again, this work can't be done in silos. And if you're doing it in silos, you're doing it all wrong. And so really hoping that this Colorado HSI Consortium really serves a support network for not only UNC, but other HSIs and emerging HSIs in the state. So definitely invite you all. Pretty excited about this. And thank you again for having me here to be able to speak a little bit on that. So again, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Del Real. I'm excited to see how UNC and institutions across our state can become involved and invested in the work you're doing. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Jonathan Alcantar to share UNC's working definition of servingness and a few recent examples of how we're putting this mission into practice with policy, communications, faculty and staff engagement, and programming. Welcome.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Alcantar, Dr. Alcantar. I'm an associate professor and chair of the Department of Chicana and Latinx Studies here at UNC. And as part of that transition, these year, we became officially the Department of Chicana Latinx Studies. So thank you for the support. It was a long journey, but we're very happy. We think that it was necessary because if we're gonna do real work, we have to be intentional. And I think that's the right way to go. Thank you very much. So we're gonna talk about servingness, right? How do we envision our work here at UNC collectively? At UNC, servingness means that we are a student-first university committed to serving Hispanic, Chicano, Latino, and Latinx identifying students through developing and implementing policies, structures, and culturally responsive practices that intentionally increase year-to-year persistence and graduation, network building, and career readiness, a career launch, and social mobility of these populations. Improving the academic success of every student will contribute to closing equity gaps and enable UNC to cultivate leaders that enrich and transform the present and future of Colorado through principles of justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. A few examples of that work in the past year is the HSI 101 and 201 faculty and staff development sessions. Outcomes include terminology and definitions, historical context, and critical facts related to HSIs, institutional context on enrollment, retention, and graduation rates, a reflection on current institutional practices, policies, and structures that might impact servingness. Another example is the establishment of an English language learner support initiative through the Office of Global Engagement. That supports the academic preparedness of students who are already excellent students yet happen to be emerging bilinguals. Structuring or support of ELLs in ways similar to a writing lab, math lab, and tutoring center. Another example are the highlights of Chicanx culture, like the Mexican-American Independence, or Independence Car Show, and the Tocando Tierra y Nuestras Raíces art exhibition, which is showing right outside these doors until October 23rd. So if you have time, please check it out. Following those examples, we also established the HSI at UNC website, which hosts expanding offerings and creates a space to house opportunities for involvement, recent highlights and stories, event links, and more. Also, the Cesar Chavez Cultural Center's month-long celebration of Latinx heritage from Thursday, September 15 to Saturday, October 15. This includes the Latinx Heritage Tailgate and football game, which happened this past weekend, a collaborative effort to celebrate Latinx heritage authentically at our athletics events while connecting more of our nearly 50% Latinx identifying community in Greeley and Evans to campus. Another example is the collaborative mural that was created by artist and instructor Leo Tanguma alongside UNC students, recently unveiled and housed in Candelaria Hall. Adding more examples of servingness, we have a few more. We launched the UNC first ever HSI quarterly communications we're calling Noticias HSI. If you have not registered, please click the Get Involved link on our website, unco.edu/HSI, to start receiving this newsletter. The continuation of Dia de los Muertos altar exhibit that has been increasing cultural awareness around our cultural celebrations for more than 20 years. And by the way, it's happening again on November 1st, Tuesday, November 1st. You are welcome to attend as well. The Latinx themed concerts through our College of Performing and Visual Arts. Upcoming, there are still tickets for Dia de los Muertos and bilingual opera shows. So there's a lot of stuff going on in our campus. And finally, one last example is the Adelante admissions event happening tonight at 6, showcases our intentional, we're being very intentional, as you can see, connection with local Hispanic and Latinx identifying students and families in supporting their understanding of the college admissions, enrollment, and financing process, and in helping them form connections with the UNC campus to center belonging. This is just the beginning. We understand that this is just the beginning. The work continues. but we're ready for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Alcantar. To close today's event and to provide additional context on UNC's readiness to apply for a federal HSI designation, I would like to welcome UNC's Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Dr. Tobias Guzman, to the stage.
So I think the purpose of giving us scripts is so that we stay on script and we don't go off. But guess what? I'm going to go off a little bit of my script because I can. You know, I started here back in 2000, and there was not such a conversation on campus to be an HSI. In fact, it was actually the opposite. That's no disparaging remarks about UNC or at that time our leadership, but I'm just telling you the facts that at that time we were struggling to figure out if we should be an HSI or not, and I think that the answer was no. So I start off with that, and I'm going to go back into what I was starting off with, and I'm going to get to the script. The road to HSI designation has been steady and progressive. In 2008, I was the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment Management, and I remember that we were at a mere 8.5% of Hispanic Latinx students. Today, 14 years later, UNC finds itself at 25.5%. The road has not always been smooth, nor has it been easy. And institutional leadership always had some questions about what does this really mean? We didn't aspire to be an HSI. However, the reason for today's enrollment numbers are interconnected and storied. Let me give you an example. In the mid-2000s, there was a concerted effort to grow the Latino-Latina population through intentional outreach to families, high schools, churches, community organizations. And admissions staff and financial aid staff resembled the student population that they hoped to recruit and serve. And the hiring of bilingual and bicultural admissions and financial aid staff proved that UNC acknowledged the rising demography of our state. Side note, there's some people in the room today that were first hires of this kind of thinking. Rudy Vargas, Chris Garcia. Fabian, are you in here? I saw you register. Fabian, no? Fabian Garcia. Our own very own photographer, where's Ivan? Oh, Ivan over here, admissions counselor. You were assigned to Greeley, right? Okay. So these are the examples and real living people that were out there recruiting students and talking with students. Fabian was in financial aid, working with students and talking with families about the complicatedness of financial aid. Moreover, the university established new ways to reach and support more Hispanic Latinx students and their families through non-traditional recruitment strategies. During the last decade, the Hispanic Latinx identifying population in the United States has increased by 23%. In Colorado, we have seen even larger increases, and specifically Greeley, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs continue to have the fastest growing Hispanic Latinx population in the state. With this knowledge, and as a university who serves these students of the state, UNC believes it is critical to increase its resources to serve as a welcoming institution for all, and particularly Latinx students. Finally, this is the third example of this road to get here. UNC took a position. President Feinstein first arrived in 2019. He was pointed, unwavering, and most of all, determined to see UNC become an HSI. At that time, we were all kind of like, well, I guess. But it was that push that we needed. Be mindful of the fact that it wasn't that folks didn't want to, it's because we didn't have that aspiration anymore. And so it changed when President Feinstein came and said, we will, right? Do you feel uncomfortable? We are, yeah, exactly. Without the support from the president and a sense of urgency for these efforts, we would not be where we are today. Developing and implementing policies, structures, and culturally responsive practices that intentionally increase students' educational attainment, career, social mobility, as well as providing them with the experience that facilitates their graduation. That's what we're here for, is we're facilitating to have the students have an experience to graduate. And that's an important aspect of becoming an HSI. The next phase of implementation, which will end here in June 2024, will produce more visible actions and efforts as the university moves closer to applying for the federal HSI designation. I'm going to cough, and so I'm going to just kind of swallow a little bit here. I'm avoiding a coughing attack. Cedric, where's the water? This morning we were in a meeting and Cedric ran and grabbed me water because I was having not a panic attack, but a coughing attack. To help our university see this through, you have noticed that Chris Garcia and Dr. Alcantar, Jonathan Alcantar, have been providing leadership, and they are specifically providing leadership for faculty, Dr. Alcantar and Chris for this staff of UNC. I chose to do this and make this part of the HSI team because, one, they have been working very hard, are committed, and we have lots of things to do. We also just appointed 20 HSI steering committee members. We had a nomination process, and we had many people that applied throughout campus. And so we have 20 individuals from faculty and staff who have applied and have been appointed. If you are here and have just recently received your appointment on Friday, can you please stand? We have many goals, and I'm not going to go over all of those goals, but I would refer you to the HSI website. And part of that is making sure that you start to see some different things happening across campus that can help you and us become a strong and effective Hispanic serving institution. I'm excited for the next few months that lie ahead, and I can't wait to be Colorado's next Hispanic serving institution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Guzman. We can see that the road towards this designation has not always been direct, but thanks to the leadership and commitment of folks like you, we're secure on why and how we'll become Colorado's next Hispanic serving institution. We would now like to open the opportunity for guests in the room and online to ask any questions that you may have.
Testing. Okay, works. Who has any questions?
It appears that you've done a wonderful job on campus with cultural events, artistic, the murals, and all of that, and many activities. And I was wondering, as I was listening to all that, what are your thoughts on how does this impact curriculum that's being taught? across UNC, all these students, how does their history, their literature become part of what's regularly taught here?
Jonathan's our resident faculty member.
Hi, Jonathan.
I knew it was going to be about curriculum. So right now, once we get together with our new team members, our goal is to really look carefully at the curriculum across our colleges. Of course, it's important to have a strong department of Chicano, Latinx studies, but when you look at HSIs, this is something that permeates everywhere. It's not just one department. So I think it's our goal to be intentional, but also culturally responsive, and not just generate content that highlights elements of Latinx, but it's actually serving our Latinx students. How do we implement curriculum that's actually helping us recruit and retain and graduate those students? I think that's one of the main priorities that we have, because if we really are about serving those students in our classes, we have to make sure that we are intentional all the way.
The other piece to that is the cross-disciplinary aspects of our disciplines. And meeting with Dean Coletti, we're talking about why and how important it is to make sure that we're not just looking at performing in visual arts when we're talking about HSI, but how are we also maybe combining that with HSS or other colleges? So there's that aspect. There's another one that just left my head, so I'm going to give it over to Dr. Montoya.
Yeah, and I think it's a wonderful question because so much of this work can't merely be wished in, right? We have to work it in, and it's a process. And I think even for us, we want to be able to support our faculty members and their andragogy and their pedagogy. And so if you go to the Colorado Department of Higher Education website, we have resources for faculty and for instructors to go and to continue to hone their own teaching practices and learn how to embed different types of epistemologies, ways of knowing, authors, and different types of things. So we're also committed in that way, in addition to the wonderful work that is being done already, to supporting our faculty members and our instructors. So it's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes. We'll do online. Okay.
This is an online question. How is UNC creating structural and systemic changes to meet the needs of Latinx students?
All right, so structural changes. There's a lot of intersection between diversity, equity, and inclusion and what we're talking about specifically. And so a lot of times people will think of the initial things to change, and that might be celebrations, okay? What we're trying to do is establish that those kinds of things that are easier, like celebrations, acknowledgements, are part of just the standard, what we start to do at UNC. And I think we've been trying to lay that framework and that groundwork. The next thing is that when we talk about structures, a good example is going and talking with the 40 tutors at the beginning of this semester and talking about what does it mean to be a first-generation student, to be a Latinx student, to be a Black student, and tutoring and what that kind of interaction looks like. And why that's part of the structure is because guess what? Those students, our students, are meeting with 40 tutors, thank you, tutors on a daily basis. Their impact is constant. Their impact with us may not be so much, but every single day. So it's making sure that there are plenty of offices and departments that are learning cultural aspects of what it means to be a Latinx, a Latino or a Latina on this campus. Another thing is trying to understand that we take ourselves out of our norms, of the frameworks that we have, such as celebration of holidays. We celebrate holidays that are very specific, but we don't recognize that a holiday to a student may be that they need to take care of family. And that taking care of family is probably first and foremost the primary thing that they need to do and must do. And so when you're a faculty member or a staff member or administrator, it doesn't matter, how much do we fully understand that? And how much do we fully actually act on it to make sure that it is conducive to that student? Because sometimes what we want to default to is show me proof. I've shared with some of you the stories that I've received last year of students that are still coming up saying, why do I have to show proof that my family member died? We still have to show proof? It's not acceptable. And so when we have that understanding, then we're able to treat students and each other differently and with a different cultural humility and cultural understanding. So those are just a few examples. We could talk about this all day. You can add.
So there are two more that I want to add, and the first one is that for the state of Colorado, UNC has the first ever bilingual communications officer. And that is an amazing structural change in the fact that, right? I mean, it's a position that we advocated for more than 2 years. And it's a position that really changes the way that we engage not only our students, but our families in the way that we're telling UNC stories in a bilingual way, in a Spanish way, and really highlighting their intentional involvement in what they're going to become as students and as families of UNC. And the second thing that I really wanted to highlight was the work of the Graduation and Retention Task Force last year. I want to highlight Stephanie Torres, who's in the back there. Let's give her a round of applause. Students come to UNC and to higher educational institutions with an excellent background in academics from our state schools and from around the country, and many of them are not English first. And the Graduation and Retention Task Force and Stephanie's work for like over 20 years has been really saying like, yo, we need some kind of, and sorry, I said yo, but we need an opportunity because these students are getting ESL and culturally and linguistically diverse educational supports in their high schools, in their middle schools, and in their elementary schools, but they don't have that in higher education. And so the creation of this English language learner support system really makes a difference for those students who are already excellent. They just happen to speak Spanish or German or French before they spoke, or Chinese or Somali or whatever these languages are before they spoke English. And I think it's important for us to note that that's a structural change that makes an impact on our students because so many of them who come even from District 6 where they speak 72 different languages need that support. So I just wanted to highlight those as well.
Thank you so much. Do we have any more questions? Yes.
So I have a question that comes from some students that I know who are both excited but also apprehensive about this effort based on their experiences here in the past. And so I'm wondering what has been done and what will be done to get anonymous feedback from student experiences, because it's, to show up to this meeting and be like I am now, a lot of people aren't going to feel comfortable doing. So is there a way for anonymous feedback to be incorporated throughout the process?
Can I get some clarification on feedback on what? On
Sure.
being an HSI?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hispanic students who have been in the system here with mixed, experiences that they've had and mixed feelings about this process because they don't feel like they have been served. So of course they want people to be better served, but there's this feeling that I've heard that is, well, yeah, it's a great way to get more funding for university, but do they actually really care about us and share their concerns and their feedback of things that are going on also right now for celebrating culture? So feeling like a trope or a token or those sorts of sentiments that I think should be shared in a way that is constructive and not singling out those people.
Right. One of the things that we value is gaining feedback and hearing the voice of the student and faculty and staff. And so everyone needs to make sure that they one, know that they have resources, whether that's our ombuds person, Johnny, where are you at? Right over here. That may need assistance in trying to navigate some of those conversations. Secondly, being able to talk with other allies on campus. But where we're gonna have a process coming up soon where we'll have the ability to really get a lot of feedback from campus. I think about some of our town halls that we've had, and I have felt that people have been providing some good information to help guide what the overall university strategic plan looks like. I feel really strong that in an upcoming process that we'll have the ability to do that. The other piece is not just surveys, but also focus groups and not necessarily designed like a focus group, but going into the spaces of our students and our faculty and staff and talking about that. I have the opportunity to be here for 22 years and know that there are some things that I still have ingrained in me of painful things that I need to let go. But I've compartmentalized those things. Now, I'm not saying that that's healthy, but I'm saying that I understand what you're saying and that there's probably a lot of people out there that may have certain things that they need to discuss and talk about. Does that somewhat address your question? Okay. Yeah.
And it's a wonderful question, and I think this lifts up the wonderful opportunity of the consortium, right? To reach out to the existing HSIs and say, how are you getting feedback about what it means to be an HSI? How are you engaging students and alumni, folks who have come through, who already have an experience, to say what you can learn from their own experience being here? And so I know in working with some of the existing HSIs, some of them do anonymous pulse surveys. So not the biannual ones, those big surveys, but they use text messaging to do pulse surveys to get feedback very quickly on certain initiatives and certain work that's happening. So I think the consortium, as Dr. Del Real was talking about, is gonna provide an opportunity to be like, what would you, and I'll say, yo, where's Chris? Yo, what would you all do, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in terms of engaging students anonymously? So we can do those types of things and lift up those best practices. And I really want to shout out, there are some of the other emerging HSIs are online today. So Northeastern Junior College is on, my alma mater, Colorado Mesa, Go Mavs is on, CSU Fort Collins, CU Anschutz, Western Colorado University, Front Range Community College, and CNCC are all here in the same kind of place where we're at. They're emerging, about to be HSIs, and probably have similar questions about how we continue to do that and how you do that continually, because this work is perpetual. It's, again, the designation is just one thing. You're going to continue to have to refine and rethink how you do those works, and you don't want it to merely be a placation of saying that this is what we are. Like, I say that HSI work is a verb. It's a verb. You have to be in action. And so I think that how we continue to involve students and how we lift those voices up is imperative to this work. So I really thank you for that question, and we'll do everything we can to support in any way that we can.
Perfect. Chris, how many more questions do we need?
I think we're good. So there will be opportunities for you to ask individuals questions. We're reaching time of our event today, but I want to thank you again so much for joining us here at UNC. This afternoon, we had the opportunity to hear about the intentional work that UNC leadership, faculty, staff, and students are doing to ensure that we are not only simply a Hispanic enrolling institution, but truly serving the students who choose to receive their education here. Please feel free to connect with Dr. Del Real or Dr. Montoya. They'll be around this afternoon, or if you have questions about UNC's efforts, please connect with Dr. Guzman, Dr. Alcantar, or myself before you go. Mil gracias por venir. ¡Vamos, Osos! Thank you.